A quick introduction. My name is Francesca Lyn. I will be the moderator for today's panel, Psychological Horror. And I'm going to actually have the panelists all introduce themselves. That way they can say as little or as much as they want of their bios. So could everyone please just introduce yourselves? We'll start with Julia and then move down and then name, let anything you want to say about yourself, and then the book and everything, of which I have images of all of them. Yes.
Okay. My name is Julia Gfrörer. I won an Ignatz Award last night. Outstanding collection, I believe, which is Larger Than the World. This is my book that came out in February or March of this year from Fantagraphics, and it's a collection of over a decade's worth of my self-published mini comics and anthology pieces, and it's like over 300 pages long. It's pretty large. You couldn't kill somebody with it, but you could maim them. And yeah, that's it, I guess.
I'm Beth Hetland. My book is Tender, also out with Fantagraphics. It came out March 24. It is the winner of the Lind Ward Graphic Novel Prize this year, which is very exciting. Thank you. And I'm also a professor of comics at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago.
Hello, I'm Ashley Robin Franklin. My book is The Skin You're In. It is also a collection. It's published by Silver Sprocket. It came out last fall. And I also make comics for middle grade and young adult audiences.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you all. Okay. I had, instead of maybe diving directly into the work, I had kind of an interesting one to start with so this came from actually, I was asked to do this panel. Well, actually, I volunteered to do this panel specifically, and then, but then I got everyone's books, and then even though I'd volunteered, I had maybe like 2 weeks to read everyone's books, and doing other things as well, and so it led to me reading a lot of y'all's work like late into the night, and then I'm not someone, I love horror in general, and usually a lot of times horror doesn't really like get to me like lots of other things, but reading all of these like back to back late at night,
Take you to a place.
just normal things started to unsettle me, like a drip in my house. I was like, what's happening? And or just a noise, and I was like, oh, this is it. And I became more and more, it was like a fun unsettled thing. It's because who doesn't like a haunted house? But it was also in my own house all of a sudden. I was like, I don't know if I like living in the haunted house. But then, so I was thinking about other older things that had unsettled me, and I wanted to know what you all had. And as far as comics, what comics do you remember truly unsettled you, especially maybe earlier ones, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay, I know exactly the answer to that. I went to Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle. I graduated in 2004. So I was in college during a great time for alt weeklies. And The Stranger, which was about alt weekly in Seattle at that time, one of them, was publishing on its back page a page from a Fantagraphics artist every week. And one week they did an Al Columbia comic. You guys know Al Columbia? Amazing cartoonist, maybe my favorite cartoonist. And it was one of his Pim and Francie comics, which Pim and Francie are these two adorable, cartoony children. His work is in a very retro, Fleischer style of that's the name, right? Old-fashioned cartoons, and then horrible things happen to these children constantly, but I didn't know that then. And so what happens in the comic is that it's one page like that, and it's like a gingerbread house, and you see the speech balloons coming out of the gingerbread house saying, "All right, you two, I'm going to cut you up and put you in my supper pie." And then you see the interior where Pim and Francie are tied up in this witch's kitchen. The witch is like this little like hunched over person, bald with like big eyebrows and a big smile. And she takes the little boy, Pim, and starts to chop him up. And as she chops him up, Francie, the little girl, starts to cry, and she says, think of the good things, Pim, the good things. Jesus and candy and Cracker Jacks, ice cream and cake and lots of laughs. And as she says this, Pim is being cooked or whatever, and then she continues to describe good things. The witch picks her up and puts her in a meat grinder and grinds her up. And the last panel is the witch holding a steaming pie and smiling. And I was like, that is so fucking bleak. It just had never occurred to me that you could introduce this grim premise and then continue to make it worse. And I was like knocked out by it. I cut it out and put it on my fridge, which my roommate did not like. I was so unsettled.
The fridge is the perfect home for a cooking comic, honestly. Yes, absolutely.
Anyway, Out Columbia, highly recommended.
That's amazing. I feel like for me, one of the biggest reactions I remember having for like a really early was the first time I read all of Uzumaki by Junji Ito. And I was traveling. Yeah, I mean, it's a classic, right? I didn't know that at the time. I was traveling and I was like staying in a hotel. I was by myself, like in the middle of like bumfuck nowhere, like I don't know. And I finished the book. And it ends with that epilogue of him like talking about spirals being everywhere. Like it's part of everything. It's always there. It's something you can't escape. It's something that will eternally outlive, possess, and is through and through every molecule of existence. And I closed the book and I remember looking around my hotel room and being like, oh my God. And I feel like thinking about that moment, I still get chills thinking about like how deep that permeated into my body of like that visceral reaction of like, it is inescapable. And I sit with that a lot.
The first thing that came to mind was reading the Inuyasha manga, and at the first few volumes are like actually quite creepy. Some of the like demon design and stuff, but there's one where there's this mask that like it like has like a mouth or like it comes up and it has like this, I don't know. Her I feel like Rumiko is like so known for like her like action and like funny stuff, but like some of her comics are like they really dive into horror. And I think that was something that really excited me. And that's like one of the first times I was like pretty like, oh, I want to try this. I want to try making stuff that's creepy, but also like, I was still pretty into like more like punchy, like fun storytelling. Also, you bringing up Junji Ito made me think about how the other day because I read both of y'all's books before this. I'm
so sorry.
I'm not.
I'm great. And I was telling my friend that I can only think of one other time that I had like a little bit of like a gag response. Because Tender, there's a scene.
I was like, it's definitely sorry.
There's just a little scene that made me go. And sorry to do that in the microphone. And
I saw what you did, so I know what it was.
yeah. And the only other time that I think I had that response was reading. There's like a Junji Ito comic where they're like somebody has like pus and like pimple. There's like pimple.
And then like glyceride is so upsetting. It's my favorite. It's really gross.
And I feel like those are the two times that I read a comic and I actually like gagged a little.
Yeah, I love glyceride because it's like there's. Just like it starts out, they live in this above a restaurant and the walls are sticky.
Yes.
And so there's just this sense of griminess.
I don't like that at all. But that sounds amazing. Yeah.
Like you think about like what it feels like on your skin, or like when like you imagine like the movie theater floor and you hear like that Like of the like, oh,
And
it's
this
so
girl
good.
who
Like,
lives there with her like weird, creepy dad and her greasy brother.
I know, it's so gross.
that's such
Yeah, I
Oh,
have a glyceride like T-shirt that I got at Hot Topic. I was like, this is so sick. Why did on the back is the picture of the guy squeezing his face in the poster.
That's the moment.
I've never worn it because I'm like, where can I fucking wear this?
You could have worn it here right now.
at the Ignatz last night. What are you talking about?
You know, my formal shirt.
That's fair.
Okay, I had a couple of different representative panels from everyone's works that, so y'all like bear with me if you look at, these are actually from Ashley's, and there is a whole series. I realized that I didn't think about this, I cannot read them from here, but looking at them as this this is built from the very beginning of this collection. So this is like kind of the first like 3 pages. But then I also have this from. This is
that's
also a shorter, another representative kind of piece from And then finally, this is from Tender. And I picked all 3 of these, if everyone can see this, because there is just such a sense of like palpable dread in very, very different artwork, but also just senses of dread in all 3 of them that was really hard to come up with like a question for, because I was just like, I feel this and I feel like everyone else reading this and even just looking at this can feel that dread feeling. But I was wondering more like, how did you establish kind of like the pacing in this to maybe like create this sense of dread for this? Because like even just like particularly if you all look at this one, just the window on there with no context, like looking at this page, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. But I couldn't even tell you even why. It almost reminded me of sometimes, you know, when something is funny, and you just laugh, but like if you had to explain to someone why it's funny, it does not funny anymore. And then I was like, but there's a lot of those kinds of moments in all of your work. So I was like, are you aware of that? Like when kind of building this sense of dread, or does it just happen and then you're like, oh, okay. Like how does it develop?
No, it's definitely like a deliberate thing. If you show me the comic, it's been a minute since I read it, but
Go back.
I'm going to take a look at it and
Yes.
I'll tell you exactly what I did. Oh my god. Okay.
do it.
Pardon
There you
me.
go. Yes. There you go.
Please.
Goodbye.
That's the right way. This is a
Yeah.
professional.
Boys and girls,
This is a professional, y'all.
I'm here to talk to you about Jesus Christ.
Praise Julia.
Okay, so it's kind of hard to read here, but the basic gist of this comic is it was an anthology piece, and the theme of the anthology was embarrassment. So I wrote it about all of my terrible habits. And I was really not well at this time, so they're really bad. And what do we have here? I think it's wearing dirty clothes all the time, smoking too much, bothering my cat until he scratches me, cutting myself with a knife and then saying the cat scratched me, cutting myself with a knife and saying nothing, read about war atrocities and cry. What is this one? It looks like, oh, that's starving myself. And you can see my ribs through my shirt. Again, it says. Probably sleeping. And the last one looks like something about pills. I'm pretty sure it says that I was hoarding like pills and liquor just in case I decided to end it. So yeah, real bleak and embarrassing for me. I don't normally, first of all, I never do autobio, but it's kind of hard to do a comic about embarrassment that's not autobio. And I was so ashamed of all these things, and more ashamed to talk about them because it seems attention-seeking. Oh my God, God forbid you want attention. And I think that they kind of go from least embarrassing to most embarrassing. Obviously, telling somebody you're suicidal, that's kind of a big deal. So that's at the end. I think that wearing dirty clothes is kind of normal, so that's at the beginning, and that makes you feel like it's not a big deal. Right in the middle is I'm cutting myself with a knife and not saying anything. So this is like, usually when I do like a 9-panel grid, that's the middle one is like the theme. Like if you took a core sample of the comic, this is the one that it would sum it up. And I've got my arms crossed. I'm wearing my sweater, so you can't see my arms. I think the sleeping one comes in between the two things that I was most embarrassed about, which were the anorexia and the suicidality. Because again, the sleeping is a little bit like not as much of a big deal. So it's kind of like worse, 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 really bad, not so bad, really, really bad. And so that's how the pacing works in that comic. And I had this list of things that I wanted to talk about, and then I arranged them in that order until it felt the most embarrassing. That's how I did it. And this, now you know the suffering that goes on in the life of a cartoonist.
I also think, sorry, with Julia's work too, like thinking about some of the, like this example, I know you broke down very clearly and succinctly of like your approach to it, but I also think about some of the times where you have characters who are sort of staring into an abyss or a void, or this idea of like waiting, like being poised. And it's not because there's an absence of action, it's that it's an anticipation of action. And I think about that with Dread a lot, in particular, actually when I was reading yours, with the cocoon page, can you go back to that first one? Similarly, like thinking about like what is in there, what's going to emerge, how is this going to happen? And it's this process of the anticipation of comics, because they're such an active medium, that you're thinking about, oh my God, what if? Which is like, that's like anxiety, right? And so like, we're just like, yeah, we're anxious. And so we're like tapping that over and over and over again. And I think about that with the difference between in pacing of, again, the absence of it or the like poised in that. Not to talk, for you guys, but that's what I see in some of your work.
This is great. And like, that's what we wanted to. It's like, you talk less, you all talk more into each other as well. Yes.
Yeah, how do you approach that with especially with like, and both of you have like anthologies, so I'm like thinking about this, and you have that motif over and over again.
Yeah. I think it is, it's all about waiting. It's all about just like simmering. And,
what a great word.
And I like what Julia mentioned about like there's like really bad, not as bad. There's like, I love a little like you're kind of like opening the pot a little bit and letting a tiny bit of steam out, before it's like we're almost done. So just like, having like, I try to, when I have the page amount, like taking like a little break, taking the heat off for a second and letting people have that like moment, or that like, oh, this is the worst it's gonna get, and then being like, no. Like one or the other, either like a break or like, not like a fake out, but just like a tease or like a little sample.
Well, it makes you think of the Al Columbia of like lingering past where you think it should be. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of horror, I think, is like you think you know where this is going, you think you know how bad it's gonna get, and then you're like, oh no, it went even further than I was expecting.
Well, I mean, horror is formulaic. Like it's a genre. Yes. We all have certain expectations of what's going to happen in a horror story, which is exciting as an artist because you have this set of preconceptions that you can trust your audience to be fluent in, usually already, or you can be part of teaching them that. And then you can either rely on that so that you don't have to do as much to establish this or that, or you can subvert it, and that can be really effective too.
Yeah, and like trust and like betrayal of trust, right? of like, we're teaching as we're reading in comics oftentimes, like, I'm setting up a set of formulas or a set of rules or a rhythm or a pattern. And then we're like, yeah, you're with it, you're comfortable, psych. Like, you know, and pulling that out or being like, how could you, right? Like with that kind of reaction, and not in the way that's like jump scare or overly gratuitous, but in a way that's more of like, you were so willing to go along with the story that now you are a cooked frog.
Yeah. It's
To go back to simmering,
right?
right?
Do a jump scare in a comic.
Right.
So you kind of have to do it in that other way where it's like a missing step.
Oh yeah, or like, yeah, you like fall down. Oh yeah.
But you know, like they're expecting something, and then when you don't do it, then that's stressful.
I'm so glad you all brought up the subversion of it already, because that's one thing that really stood out to me, because I was like, these are all very different works. But there is a subversive quality in all of your work. And one thing, and this is like kind of a basic thing, one thing that stuck out immediately about it was the use of color in particular. I saw as like, if people are expecting maybe like horror, you maybe have associations of a certain color palette of that, right? Like, yeah, it's like, oh, and that signals like, oh, it's spooky time or something like that. But that is not, and you all seeing like, for instance, this is from Tender, and those are like which I thought were great, like the end paper colors that you have in there, as well as this and this color scheme of it, which is like not what you'd immediately expect, right? And then these are also, this is just like one of the way that the collection, Julia, that you did is so many different colors and also maybe unexpected colors within that, and then also let's see, this and this like is another like kind of excerpt from Ashley's work, and like that one I was just like, oh my gosh, like I've never like this, like, but it's terrifying, the little scene of this, and I was like wondering if you all could talk more about the use of, or also even in places where, or maybe the absence of color, and what kind of choices, how that maybe guided or shaped your narratives.
Yeah, I think one of the really early, like, germinating seeds for this book was thinking about Giallo films and thinking specifically about candy-coated horror, and 1977 Suspiria as like a touchstone. And I also think about, not in like a synesthesia way, but in a way that comics doesn't have the ability to have audio unless you're performing them. And then that's a whole different medium of itself. And so for me, some of the color saturation is directly linked to raising or lowering tension, and that being interpreted almost like a visual sound, and as a way to expand or think about how an audio could be, or like the saturation could explore that, is that you wouldn't expect something that's a bright pink or a bright purple to hurt you. Like purple feels safe, but it's not. It's incredibly dangerous. And I think that's important, right? Like, and also I think about too, like the body, like there's so many weird colors inside of us that like...
Purple in the body is real bad.
Right, purple
like
in the body is bad.
Well.
It's no good. You should not have a lot of purple in there, right? Typically that means rot. So like things like that where it's like on the surface level, you're thinking like, oh, how fun, it's so bright, it's so colorful. And then actually as you're paying attention to it, it's quite a bit more of the stench within, and like almost the like pain of the saturation and the brightness. That's my approach.
Lovely. Yeah, so the majority of my book is black and white, and there are only a couple of moments where we get some color. And one of the beginning of this comic that we saw earlier is all just like grayscale, and I really wanted to like this page when you open it to be like a surprise, and I don't know, it's like something really otherworldly is happening, and I felt like having these kind of more like psychedelic and kind of more I don't know, just like really unnatural colors made a lot of sense because a lot of the book is like more kind of like plant or like botanical horror, or like nature horror. And so just the like kind of shock of having these like really unnatural colors. Like the thing that is happening here is not a part of the nature that we like understand and have come to like expect. So yeah, I wanted to be a surprise, and I wanted it to be, yeah, just like there's something so like uneasy about like seeing colors where they don't belong. You know, it's like it's a warning. It's like it's something. I don't know. It just can be so shocking. So I wanted to play with that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like those poison dart frogs, but also like the way that like almost like the way that maybe like something is like kind of like wrong about seeing like, I don't know, like a child's toy in like a abandoned field or something like that, and you're like, what happened here? Like there's something about that by the time I got to this point in the book that I was like, like I did not like expect it. Why is this colorful? Like what's happening? Yeah, and I thought that was, yeah, all of this is really interesting.
I don't really use color very much, and I just really like black and white art, and my favorite artists, mostly the ones that influence me the most, are all working in black and white. I made a little list so I wouldn't forget. Okay, we got Kathy Kolowitz, we got Otto Dix, Sally Mann, Julia Margaret Cameron, Kara Walker. These are all like artists who do work that's very unsettling, very visceral, but also like mysterious because they have these stark blacks and whites that kind of push and pull you and can be very frightening. I just find that really exciting. I love line. So I mostly stick around with it. Coloring a comic takes a really long time, and I rarely feel like it looks better when I'm done. So I don't. And I also photocopy my work mostly at home using a photocopier that I found in the trash. So it's much cheaper to print black and white. But in order to add some visual interest, I do print my minis on colored paper. And I think this is a trick that I stole from either Lala Albert or Johnny Negron, who were printing their black and white comics on like goldenrod yellow paper, and I was like, oh, this is so sexy. This is like really like brings another dimension to it. And I don't know, well, you said some of the colors were unexpected.
I just think, well, because I was looking at them and I was like, sometimes you pick like just like probably from like paper stock, but you went with like the almost like a minty green or something like
there's
that.
Lime green one.
Yeah, and I'm like
that's palm ash.
yeah, and I was like, I'm very much attracted to the way this is.
Yeah.
But then I was like, oh, I'm going to definitely ask about this, and I have a feeling it's because of like maybe those stock kind of office paper that you can like that were originally existed, but then reproduced pretty faithfully as these in this collection.
Yeah, it's pretty eye-watering.
Yeah.
In the original. So I worked at a paper store. I worked at the Paper Zone for only a year, but it was a long year. And so I learned a lot about like paper stock and what you can and can't do with different types of paper. And so that color is an Astro Bright. I think it might be Gamma Green. No. Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. And I did special order it because I just really love that paper, and I was like obsessed with that acid green. And that story is like, it's about Christian martyrs in ancient Rome, and I felt like it needed like something up front to be like exciting so that you don't like read it and think it's going to be like a chick tract.
Yeah. Yeah, but even, which is also interesting though, because the other association I had with some of those colors were like church pamphlets and church leaflets, and I was like, I'm like, is this intentional? I collect
like chick tracts and other various like religious pamphlets that you like you find them or people will hand them to you sometimes. They're really interesting design decisions on there. No, for real, because they're designed to communicate to a very specific audience, often one that is not necessarily like immersed in visual art culture. And also printed in a way that is expedient for people who are very old. So you see some like more old-fashioned decisions going on there. And yeah, colored paper like in a hymnal or something like that, in like a supplement of a, is definitely like something that when I started printing my books in color, I was really drawn to like pink and baby blue paper for that reason. Yeah.
Thank you for indulging me with that. I'm also like, I'm a weird paper person too about that. Yeah, and that's why, yeah. And okay, that is a good way to go. Let's go to the next one. My last one is,
You guys can all read that, right?
yeah, y'all can read this, right? And this is a very good, like high resolution version of as well, as far as I can find, but it was, but it is hard to read and just like, I don't know, I'm like batshit, honestly, to be like, it's amazing. So I'm just gonna look at a couple, and we'll go back and forth and everything. I wanted to talk as a, kind of one of my last like main focus questions is structure and structural things on here. And there's like, so there's like a bunch of, really, you all three of you really put me through it in lots of different ways. But my question on this is more of a, okay, there's also unexpected color we talked about, subversion of color, but there's also a lot going on here with all of y'all with form and formal qualities. And all of them are very different decisions. But like Julia decided to put more panels than is humanly possible in a story that is also terrifying. And then also, this is a horror story told completely through like Instagram photos and captions. And then finally we have like just a terrifying sequence that is very much regimented and punctuated by this color, but also kind of like, I don't know, how do we, I put like kind of like the micro and the macro happening at the same time in like a very regular formation. And I wonder if y'all could talk about maybe like your interest in like subverting the form, or your interest in making things that are scary that are supporting the form, or anywhere you all want to talk about this or to each other about it, because I know you've seen each other's work.
Beth, we hate you. This is like an intrusive thought that you've had?
I don't know, like, okay, yes, and also it's like an homage to Black Swan, right? And also it's an intrusive thought I have that I like can't stop. Like I am a cuticle picker, like I can't help it. Like I don't stop ever.
So bad this week. I was so nervous about the goddamn agents.
Yeah, I just finally healed one of them, but like it's just bad, and I can't stop, and I don't know why, and it's not healthy, and like I continue to think about what if it just goes all the way up my arm? Like I don't know, what if that happens?
Sorry, I just had to ask you that.
Yeah, of course.
Subverting the form.
Babel cheese.
Yeah,
Babel cheese.
Well, I recently went, okay, so I know we're on this for a long time, so you'll get numb to it in a second, don't worry. But so I did an interview with Phoebe Gluckner, and she brought up this she's amazing and gross. She brought up this amazing Irish witchcraft love spell that I'd never heard about, and she thought this was a reference to something called a spancel. Has anybody heard of this? Yeah, it's super fucked up, so get ready. So what you do is, let's say you want somebody to fall in love with you. Classic. You find a corpse, and then you cut a thin strip of skin that is a continuous loop starting at the bottom of the foot, all the way up the body, over the shoulder, back around to the foot, so that you have a single loop. Okay? Take this loop, braid it into a belt, go to that like you do. Go to that object who you want to fall in love with you, and you bind your feet and their feet together while they sleep unknowingly for 3 consecutive nights. And then, it's not over yet. And then, after the third night, that belt you have to wear until you die, and then that person will be in love with you until that's over. And or the belt falls off, but it's like a belt woven with, it's like an Irish plait, so it's like many layers. Yeah, it's sturdy. And it's like the skin is just one of them, and then there's also like other yarn and shit or whatever. So she was mentioning that, and I was like, I've never heard of this. This is disgusting. But now I think about it constantly, and I think about what the knife work of that. I don't know how else to say it. So I'm sorry, and also I'm not sorry. And then now you all are cursed as well. So never fall in love. That's the moral of that.
So to get back to
go to Julia's. Get out of that slide.
So sometimes I have like a form that I'm comfortable in, and then it's funny that this is another comic that's about me where I'm a character, because again, that is not normally what I do. But this is a comic where I have a conversation with this 17th century Jesuit scholar called Athanasius Kircher, who I love, partly because he was writing books about science at a time when science did not really mean the same thing that it does now. And he was writing about things that are invisible. I think he wrote a book about magnetism. He wrote a book called The Egyptian Oedipus, in which he decided that he had figured out what Egyptian hieroglyphics meant. And it was a lost language at this time, as it was until the Rosetta Stone was found a couple of hundred years later. He was nowhere near it. He just made it up. But it was like a big deal. Like, they sent him the Voynich manuscript because they were like, Athanasius, you're a genius. You're the only person who can read Egyptian hieroglyphics. Please figure out this other. And so, and in the frontispiece of that book, he put a picture of, Oedipus answering the riddle of the Sphinx. This is him answering the riddle of how to read Egyptian hieroglyphics. I was like, that's so baller. I'm so proud of you. You're so wrong. And he wrote a book, which my book is named after, called Mundus Subterraneanus, which is, the world underground, the world within the world. And I'm so compelled by this idea, this central image with the earth with these pools and veins of lava and water. That's what he decided was in the earth. Like, that he wasn't like, I'm not really sure what he based this assumption on, but he had a lot of ideas, enough to fill a book about what's underground, what's inside the earth. And he just wrote a book about it. Good for him. Great job. Thank you. So in this comic, I'm asking him, so there's the world, and then we have the world under the world. So what's under there? So we're talking about how, you go inside and then you can go more inside. All rooms have more rooms inside them, including the human body. And then he takes me on a tour of the world underground, and we encounter all these things that really are unpleasant to me personally. We sail on a river that is fed by the tears of people that I used to love. And then you see like my ex-boyfriend crying because he didn't want to go to my art show because it was too pretentious. True story. And then we go to this, I think like an iron red hot mountain haunted by demons that are telling you horrible and useless truths, like, the first time somebody hits you, then you should leave them. It's a lot harder than it sounds. And it's like, that. When somebody hurts you, you know that that's wrong, but it's also like, that knowledge is not enough to make you go. So there's a useless fact. So there's a lot of stuff like that. I'm just like, again, as is my mission, I'm trying to go deeper, make it worse. And this is kind of the thesis statement of the book, because it's kind of what I do. And it is very densely packed with panels because I wrote this again for an anthology or a newspaper, and the page was about this big, and I was like, I like to do comics that look like this size, like 8.5 by 11. So I was like, well, I'll just do the same panel size that I would normally do, but I'll fill the whole page with it. And I'll put the big Mundus Subterraneanus in the middle. So that's what I did. And I like it because it really, first of all, good job me with the composition of the like dark in the middle. So you go like in and kind of out again. The denseness is a little bit stressful. It reminds me of Cryptic Wit. I forget the name of the guy who made that comic, but like every single page of Cryptic Wit is so packed with comics and more comics that it's just like very upsetting to look at the page, even though the comic itself is not upsetting, it's mostly just silly. So yeah, there's a sense of density and penetration and distress.
Yeah, I think I actually realized that I talked about structure, but I think a better way of talking about this is something that you just said for all three of you. It's stressful is how I would and because I wanted to also touch on this is one of like the most stressful things I've read in a long time. This particular story that you all probably if you haven't read it yet is about like kind of a plant that is taking over someone's life, but also about maybe the voyeuristic nature as well as this other horror. And I just found it so stressful. It's also one of the few things that has color in it, right? And then then I was like, but this is one of the most stressful, in my opinion. And I wondered if you could talk about that as well.
So I really wanted to, for you to have that feeling of like, you're scrolling through, you're just in it, you're getting these like, often like kind of stylized or like really like intentional images that people put out of their lives. So it's like, it's like I decided to do it in color because it's like you're seeing at the very beginning things look very nice, and so you're seeing like this like beautiful girl and she has her plants and everything's just so lovely and like curated and intentional. But it's like you can't. At no point in this do you really see like her full, like you're never in like her full, you're always in this like kind of removed perspective of like you're the spectator, you're the person with the phone. And I don't know, I think that tension is like very fun to play with. I think that I made this like during kind of the height of like lockdown, so I also was like looking at everybody else on my phone. Like I was spending a lot of time being like, what are people doing? Oh, this person's gardening. Oh, this person's making bread. Oh, this person's going to their really stressful, like, brilliant, like, job that they are, what was it called?
First responder?
Not first responder, but like people who had worked at grocery stores and stuff.
Yeah.
Like essential workers.
Essential worker.
And so it's like this kind of like, I don't know, like the friction of like, I'm like, so immersed in looking at like I'm not seeing people in real life, and so it's like the feeling of like I'm just getting these like snippets that are like I don't know how representative of their actual experience they are at all, and so I think it like completely made sense that I was like, okay, this is the lens I'm looking at everything right now, and so this is the lens that you are forced to view the story in.
I loved in this one that the like number of likes starts dropping with every single new post, and it's like ticking down like a clock, and it's like that goes back to this like question of dread, and like that is like a way to include like this built-in part of the formal structure of like Instagram and social media, and then it's like less and less and less and less and less, and it's like, oh no, because like it's a problem, it's with that character, like it part of it has to do with like the absence of people and the absence of interaction, but then you see that in this like, it was very cool.
Okay, I wanted to make sure we have enough time for like some audience questions. I guess, as we are, I don't know, do people have questions? There are microphones in the middles.
Great, we did it all. Oh. Oh, don't leave it there for them.
I'm not.
They've been subjected enough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I
they've
can
been
have,
subjected enough.
All right, she's ready.
Everyone's
Let's hear what she has to say.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think a lot of the time, kind of the social function that horror serves is a way for us to discuss like social fears and societal taboos, kind of filtered through a lens that removes it from us and puts it somewhere else so we can talk about it. And I'm curious how you all have experienced that or interpreted those sort of social forces through your work.
I mean, I think everything that I write about is a metaphor, and so I'm like, usually I start out with like some issue that I can't put it down, and it's making me crazy, and I ruminate on it until it, I'm kind of trying to explain it to myself in my head, and then I think like, oh, it's as if this, it's as if that. For example, my comic graphic novel, Black is the Color from 2013, starts out with a sailor being basically ejected from his ship. They put him on a dinghy and they're like, well, good luck, because they're running out of food or whatever, and he's the most recent person to be hired. I wrote this when I got laid off, and I was a single mother of a 1-year-old. I didn't have any family nearby, so, and my ex-husband had recently just kind of like disappeared and nobody knew where he was. He was fine, he wasn't like kidnapped, it was like a mental illness thing. Fine, yeah. The point is, everything in my life got bad really quickly, and I was like, floating alone in this contextless place. So I'm picturing myself like that. I'm thinking about my boss being like, oh, well, we can't really afford to keep your position. Maybe like a week after they were like, oh, you're so important to us. We're like a family here. If there's anything we can do for you, just let us know. So, and then I was like in the car listening to Ocean Songs by Dirty Three, as I do when I'm sad. And this image of this sailor just came to me. I was like, that's me. I just got thrown off my fucking boat. Now I'm just floating and nobody cares. So it's always that. It's always some kind of a thing like that where I settle on an image and I'm like, yes, that's me. This is how it is for me. And it's usually a bad feeling, so the image is something kind of upsetting. And so your question was about addressing societal fears through horror. I think it's not something that I'm setting out to do or like consciously. I'm not like, I'm gonna help people understand how it feels to get laid off. But I think when you talk about stuff that is resonant to you, and this is why I'm always encouraging people to make it idiosyncratic, get weirder. When you feel that you are reaching towards something that nobody else can understand, that's what you really need to put out there, because somebody is out there waiting for you to articulate it. So I wrote it about me, and then it turned out to be about a lot of other people also. And in that way, it is a tool for addressing a feeling that people have and suffer with, no longer alone.
Yeah, I think that's really well said, and feel like very similarly about the specificity of channeling your own experiences and like fictionalizing or turning them into like metaphor. That the more specificity you have, actually, the more universal it becomes, because there are other people. You're tapping into something that is something else that people feel, but in a way that is only how you could tell it and only how you could do it. And I think that not setting out to try to speak for any particular group or represent any particular, intersection or anything, but this is what freaks me out.
I think all of the stories in here are really about different kinds of relationships and like tension in relationships and like the kind of different dread you have of like can I know somebody else? Can I know myself? Is like in every single one of these stories. And that's something that I think, I don't know, I'm like a really anxious person, and I experience a lot of dread that are really, like, those are some of the like main things, are just like, yeah, like relationship tensions, and like all kinds of relationships, like not just like romantic, but like, I mean like friendship and familial, and then also with myself. And yeah, even though it's like, I'm like channeling like my own specific anxieties and fears and stuff, I don't know, like what is more like universal. Like everyone has relationships, even like the absence of relationships is something.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for waiting so patiently.
So a lot of horror uses mental illness and trauma as a big subject, and it's not always done well at all. How do you, in your works, use mental illness and use trauma without reinscribing it on the reader or portraying it in a damaging way?
Okay, I don't feel responsible for traumatizing people. Like, it's a book. You can put it down if it's upsetting. That's really not my problem. I try to depict mental illness, my own and that of other people that I maybe like am influenced by in my life, truthfully and with integrity. But I have to talk about it in a way that makes sense to me. So for example, like I had this comic where I'm talking about cutting myself. I understand, hearing somebody talk about cutting themselves, sometimes that makes somebody want to cut themselves. It's not my problem, I don't know you. And I understand also, like, I won an Ignatz Award yesterday. I'm a special guest of this show. I'm a very influential person. Maybe like telling you that I did that, like maybe that makes it seem like it's okay, and it's not, but like it's fine. I didn't die. It was better than a lot of other things that I could have done. I think honesty is the cure for a lot of those kind of dilemmas. The responsibility to represent things in a socially beneficial way is too much of a burden for an individual artist who is just trying to get out this like fucking like kidney stone of a story that is living inside you and trying to get out.
And I also think, like, just to interject as a reader, that I didn't necessarily, because there's not necessarily this is definitely autobiographical in it, I didn't, like, as I'm picking up that, I did not pick that, like, thinking that was necessarily autobiographical.
Oh, you didn't? I didn't.
Yeah, like, just because I was like, or that it was like literal, even if it was autobiographical. You know what I mean? Like, because it's not necessarily like this definitely happened on this day in the same kind of way. Like, because I was like, it could have been, but it also, like, I'm careful not to inscribe autobiographical things, even if the person maybe looks like that person, just because it could be. I'm like, this could be dreams, these could be the nightmares, these could be all of the anxious feelings, and so, like, I think that is also something to it. It's not like a prescriptive. None of this work is prescriptive. Yeah.
I think too, there's people bring their own experiences and thoughts and histories and traumas and everything else to work, right? Like, I can make the work in the way that I want to make it and tell the story how I want to tell it. And I've heard from multiple different people about what, like, their own diagnosis of my character. And that's not what I'm coming into this work making, and nor do I think she has any diagnosis. She's a manipulator. That's different. Like, that's not about these other things that people are bringing in, and there may be connections to someone else's lived experience, or there may be connections to somebody in a very specific way. But I think that that's really, it's tough. As soon as you put work out there, right, somebody's gonna bring whatever they have with them to it, and it can be a really tough question. I think like the field of graphic medicine is an interesting one to think about, like how are people representing like mental health illness and trauma in ways that are trying to either educate or destigmatize, and I think genre fiction is a little bit of a different beast, but I think that's a really interesting question to sort of grapple with, because at any point, again, as soon as work is out of you, as soon as you've passed the kidney stone, somebody else's kidney stone, you know?
I mean, I think like it's a difficult, there's not really a good answer for that in horror specifically, because horror is about unpleasant things happening. And you can't write like a horror story where somebody is haunted by ghosts and then they're saved by their paranoia.
But I also would say
it's
that
not going to be a positive experience if it's depicted.
my character has an extremely traumatic birth, and I made a very intentional choice to not be with her during that, because I do not like in horror specifically that yucky birth.
Yes, girl, yeah.
I hate that, period. And I also am not interested in milking her experience of going through this extremely painful, extremely common thing that happens to people simply for the sake of grotesquerie. I do not want that. We skip that point very intentionally. So that's one way, I guess, that I am thinking about like how trauma exists while moving through it, to say that's not why she's like how she is. That is a piece of something that happened to her, but that is not the root of what is happening. Sorry, that was like very passionate. Sorry. I hate it. I don't like it.
The only thing I want to add is that I think that, I mean, everyone here in this panel definitely does that, but it's like approaching something either through like your own, like it's, you know, inspired by or jumping off point of like your own experiences or like people that you are close to, instead of doing, or like with like genuine like curiosity is like so different than when you can tell when someone's doing like very lazy storytelling where they're like, oh, and you know, I've seen all these horror films where it's like this person, you know, has this one mental illness or they're this one kind of like marginalized person or whatever it is. And it's like, I'm not even saying like all those films are bad or anything. That's just like, that's, I don't know, like that's, it's too, but it's like, that's not, I do appreciate it. Yeah. How like you can really see that in like on both of your work that it's like, you can tell that there's no like lazy storytelling moment, you know, which I think is like, I think that's kind of the key to, I don't know, not doing work that is just, yeah, that is like, that's like harmful in this kind of way that is like flippant or just like if you're harming your reader, there's like a reason, you know?
This has been a wonderful conversation. We are like over time. I'm so sorry, y'all. Yes, thank you all very much. Please come and see all of these cartoonists at their tables.
Well, actually, you can come see me and Julia at Fantagraphics right now for signing.
Woo!
Yes,
Books.
please.
My table
Yes.
is J13. Please come buy my anthology. It's very heavy. I don't want to bring it home. Sorry.
I'm at H10.
D3B, I think.
D3B.
D3B.
That's euphonious.
Thank you. Sorry.